We have a massive overdraft as a country at the moment. We have an NHS that feels like it's on its knees. We have a welfare system that's out of control. And we do need to spend more money on defence.
The new Defence Secretary, Wes Streeting, will be here with us at 7 o'clock. He is trumpeting an £8 billion announcement in the next stage of the project to build 4 new nuclear-armed dreadnought submarines. But that money is part of a larger sum already earmarked for nuclear defence. So the Conservatives are saying it's just a re-announcement. So how committed is Andy Burnham to raising overall defence spending quickly? Well, in an answer given at his Social Care news conference, he gave his strongest indication yet that he will not increase defence spending to 3% of national income by 2030. Instead, the PM said he would meet a longer-term NATO target to spend 3.5% on core defence spending by 2035. We can speak to Sean Bell, the military analyst. Morning, Sean. If we don't hit that 3% by 2030, are we at risk from an attack? From Russia, specifically?
Yeah, good morning to you both. It's not quite, I wouldn't be quite that bleak. The whole point of this is that we live in a dangerous world. Every time you turn on your television now, I'm regularly being asked about the war in Ukraine. Russia last night launched a barrage of strikes. The Iran war seems to be erupting further with the Houthis and now Iraq involved. And it is a more dangerous world. And the fact is that we as a small island nation have not been paying our insurance premiums for the last 35 years. We have woeful shortfalls in our military capability. We have no way of protecting against ballistic missiles at all. And the only way that credibly we're going to be able to deter any nation's enemies is to actually be part of an alliance. And if we're going to be part of an alliance, we need to pay our way. Otherwise, nobody else will have us as part of that alliance. And that alliance, whether it's European or NATO, probably a collection of both, means that at the moment we need to be, they've all agreed we're going to spend 3% by 2030, 3.5% by 2035, in order for all of us collectively to develop the set of military capabilities we need to keep us safe. And if any nation fails to deliver that, that undermines the credibility of the alliance, but also puts that individual nation as a less credible partner.
One of the core questions always in these discussions, Sean, is how quickly the money can be found, allocated and spent. And is there not an argument that actually by ramping this up too quickly, the money could be spent poorly and wasted and not on the things that we actually need?
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, I think you've got to be very, very careful. I've always claimed that just turning on the money tree, if we started spending 3.5% of GDP today, you can't live down to Sainsbury's or other supermarkets and suddenly fill up with tanks and aeroplanes. They're just not available. The challenge at first is to get the intellectual argument sorted so that actually you get rid of the stuff that you needed for the sort of wars of choice where we've travelled afar for the last 35 years. Now to wars of national survival. But the harsh reality is that the Ministry of Defence has been doing its homework for some years now. It's got a plan. It simply needs money to convert that aspiration into hard equipment. And the real challenge here, I suspect, is we don't just want to buy American kit. We want to make defence the foundation of growth for this country. We need some positive news. We need to have some industrial base in this country. We have a great pedigree of selling international military capability overseas. If we can just get our defence industrial base spun up, this could be a profitable enterprise for the UK, not simply a money pit for the future.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because that's very much the kind of tone of what we expect the Prime Minister to be announcing through the course of the day today, which is this ongoing investment, I suppose, in nuclear submarines to protect Britain for decades to come and support jobs and apprenticeships. So the sort of money allocation is not new. Actually, it was already accounted for, and the bulk of the money, £47 billion, is going to go on keeping nuclear submarines in operation, and the replacement dreadnoughts are on the way. This will also mean starting work on what might replace them in 30 years' time, and also constructing several other new subs and upgrading naval docks and manufacturing facilities as well. So I suppose there's a question in here, Sean, about, is this money well spent?
Well, and in a way, that's almost a completely separate question, because we as a nation maintain an independent, credible nuclear deterrent. The way we do that is that we don't want to buy thousands and thousands of ballistic missiles so that your enemy can't be guaranteed to take them all out. What we do have is by putting 4 submarines, one continuously at sea at any one time, where they're very difficult, if not impossible to find, means that we have the ability to strike back should the nation be attacked. And that very doubt that the enemy doesn't know where your nuclear submarines are, therefore if it does strike it will get hurt, puts a seed of doubt, and that's part of our deterrent. And now that's not going to be able to be exported particularly. That's simply a government decision that successive governments have made, that we are going to invest. The trouble is, it's a significant chunk of the defence budget. It was brought in many years ago rather than being separately funded. Routinely it cost about 12% of the defence budget. At the moment it costs about 24% of the defence budget. In other words, a quarter of the money going, because we are replacing the Vanguard class with the Dreadnought class. Now, it's not my job to decide the positives or negatives. There's no doubt that there is a huge benefit in us having that deterrent, but it consumes a huge quantity of money. So the announcements today are more simply, as you say, it was already committed money. It is jobs. So rather than just spent willy-nilly, it is creating jobs in the UK. But when I talk about defence as the foundation of growth, I'm looking at missile systems, I'm looking at tanks, I'm looking at rounds, ammunition, everything that our alliance also uses, not just ourselves. If we can be part of that ecosystem and export, now we create a really vibrant opportunity for the UK.
Yeah. And what does that... I mean, it's interesting as well, I suppose, the kind of framing of this announcement today. It puts these apprenticeships, 22,000 of them, kind of on an equal footing almost with the announcement of... with the... Well, it is an announcement, I guess, but it's the announcement of the committed money. It's in the headline of what Andy Burnham is conveying. And I suppose there is perhaps an interesting consideration in whether the weighting of his priorities is changing here towards, as you're guessing at, using defence as a vehicle for growth.
Yeah, and if I was to be, and you'll have to excuse me, Calum, but I've got a fair bit of grey hair. I've been around this boy a few times before. There's a degree of scepticism here that you've got Andy Burnham, who, as a new Prime Minister, he's clearly going to be asked questions about defence. The opportunity to make an announcement about the nuclear programme, which has already been in train, it's been in development for many decades now, so it's not a new announcement at all. What it does seem to bolster his credibility in terms of defence. If you look at him as a Prime Minister at the moment, he's facing a very difficult challenge. I don't want to get political. This is me being agnostic, but it's clear that his own personal priorities are care needs, and that's a big issue for this country. But you have to remember, big picture, we have a massive overdraft as a country at the moment. We have an NHS that feels like it's on its knees. We have a welfare system that's out of control, and we do need to spend more money on defence. And I think what's interesting is the new announcements, fresh money, seem to be more around spending money on things like care rather than committing to spend more money on defence. And I think that's the one thing that Andy Burnham's going to find himself under laser focus, particularly given it feels like a very dangerous world. We can't ignore it anymore. We need to be better prepared. Otherwise, as a military guy, the best way to deter war is to prepare for it. We're not prepared at the moment.
And so you would target 3% by 2030. Is that what you would sign up to, Sean?
Well, you want to remember this 2030 figure, unfortunately, it's a bit of an illusion because the government ends in 2029, and therefore this government under this regime will be very difficult for it to commit to 2030. It's like commission 2035. It's all in the next government. From my perspective, you need to have a steady growth towards 2030 so that you're able to hit 3%. There's not a big jump from 2.6% to 3% because that will be really difficult to do. Yeah. But politically, you can understand why there's no wriggle room at the moment, and there's generally no votes in defence. However, I notice recent polls have suggested that well over half the population now recognise that we need to spend more money on defence, and therefore it's a question of how our politicians meet that challenge.
Yeah, it's a good point, Sean. Good to speak to you. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
That is military analyst and host of the Red Matrix podcast, Sean Bell.